Today we're going to talk about the quadratic formula. So the aim is that students will be able to use the quadratic formula to solve for the roots of a quadratic equation. So when you get your foldable, make sure you just cut on the dotted lines. Don't cut anywhere else, just only on the dotted lines. So inside your foldable, we have the actual quadratic formula, which is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. You will have to memorize this formula. Okay, so why do we use the quadratic formula? The quadratic formula allows you to solve any quadratic equation, even if you cannot factor it. Not every quadratic equation is factorable, so we still need to be able to solve it and find the roots. So it's used when any other methods of factoring do not work. So our quadratic formula, what is A, B, and C? Well, A, B, and C are the different coefficients of our quadratic equation. So we have y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Those are all of our coefficients. And so for the example that's given, y equals 3x squared minus 4x plus 2, a is 3, b is negative 4 because it says minus 4, and c is 2. Now, how can you remember the quadratic formula? So there's a song that I'm not going to sing for you, but we're going to click on it and we're going to have this little girl sing it for you, but it's actually helpful for you to learn to memorize the song. So we're just going to pull it up here on YouTube.
Got one so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, I wonder what you are. Good job, Emily. What about X equals? X equals negative. X equals negative plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac.
All right, so back to our PowerPoint. So make sure that you do not fall for any of these traps. So the quadratic formula only uses the coefficients. Do not include any variables. Also, the formula is equal to x. So we're using it to find the x values, or what we call the roots, or the zeros, or the solutions, or the x-intercepts. All of those different things, that's what we're finding. It is the x. So we're going to go to the first example in our foldable. We're solving x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. So first thing, whenever you're using a formula, is you write the formula first. And then you're going to substitute the values into the formula. Well, we need to figure out what's A, what's B, and what's C. Since x does not have a number in front of it, it's always an invisible 1. Then we have B, which is 2, and C, which is negative 8. So we're going to take it and substitute A, B, and C into our formula. So we have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 8 divided by 2. So we're going to start simplifying it so that we can figure out what our x's are. So 2 squared becomes 4, and negative 4 times 1 times negative 8 becomes 32. So you have plus 4 plus 32 under the radical. Everything else kind of comes down, the negative 2, the plus and minus, and then we have 2 times 1, which is 2. We're going to add 4 and 32 together, which give you 36. And then we take the square root of 36, which we know is 6. So because we have this plus or minus in between, what we have to do is we have to separate into two different answers. So we have negative 2 plus 6 divided by 2, and then we have negative 2 minus 6 divided by 2. And when you simplify that, you end up with 2 and negative 4, And those are our two answers. X is equal to 2 and X is equal to negative 4. All right. So we're solving for the zeros or the roots of the following quadratic equation. This is our example 1. We have x squared plus 9x plus 14 equals 0. So our first step is to figure out what's A, B, and C. So A is 1, B is 9, and C is 14. So we're going to write the formula. Always write the formula first. And then we're going to substitute the values in. So this is our formula without the values. And then we're just going to substitute A, B, and C. So we have negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 9 squared minus 4 times 1 times 14 divided by 2 times 1. So from here, we're going to bring down our negative 9 and plus or minus. And then we're going to do 9 squared, which is 81. And it's going to be minus 4 times 1 times 14. That's going to give you 25 under your radical. You can actually put that whole thing in your calculator to figure out that that's going to be 25. Once we do that, you need to make sure that you have two different answers. So you're going to have negative 9 plus 5 divided by 2. And we get 5 because 5 is the square root of 25. And then we're going to have negative 9 minus 5 divided by 2. Again, the 5 comes from doing the square root of 25. So when we simplify it, we end up with two answers. Our two answers are negative 2 and negative 7. And again, make sure you use the proper notation for your answer. Example 2, we're solving for the zeros. This one is a little bit different because we have 2x squared plus 7x minus 11. So with that, we have to subtract 11 from both sides so that our equation is equal to 0. Once we have our equation equal to 0, then we can define A, B, and C, with A being 1, B being 7, and C being negative 11. Please don't forget about the negative. Okay, we're going to write our quadratic formula out first. And then we're going to substitute all of the values into our quadratic formula. So we end up with negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 7 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 11 divided by 2 times 2. So we're going to simplify what's under the radical. Make sure you put that whole thing in your calculator. You don't even have to do it step by step. Just put that whole part under the radical in your calculator. So you end up with negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 137 divided by 4. Now, again, break our problem up into two different parts. Negative 7 plus the square root of 37 over 4 and negative 7 minus the square root of 37 over 4. Now, the reason why we can't simplify the square root of 137, the way we did the other ones is because 137 is not a perfect square. So it's going to give us a decimal. So we need to put negative 7 plus the square root of 37 over 4 into our calculator. And it's going to give us a decimal. It's approximately 1.7617 and so on and so forth. And the same thing with the other side. We're going to have to put it in